Hello everyone. This is Anita Goswami, Assistant Professor of English at Government College Rajgarh Churu. So, in today's session, we will talk about the poem Spring and Fall by G.M. Hopkins, and this poem is prescribed in BA Part 2nd, MGSU Bikaner. So, students, before moving ahead, let's talk about a brief the poet of today's poem, who is Gerald Melny Hopkins. The poet is G.M. Hopkins, who was born in 1844 and died in 1889. He was an English Victorian poet. And after a long period of obscurity, he is now regarded as one of the leading Victorian poets. He did not get published until 1918, almost 30 years after his death. So he was educated at Highgate School and subsequently went to Oxford, where he came under the influence of the Oxford movement and John Henry Newman. In 1866, he converted to Roman Catholicism, and 2 years later he joined the Jewish Society. In 1877, he was ordained to priesthood. Hopkins is regarded as a great innovator of poetic language due to the originality to his style. He succeeded in breaking up the outdated and outworn conventions used in poetry at that time. Hopkins' poetry belongs to the modern period. On the basis of its subject matter, its use of language, and the experimentation in rhythm and syntax, he was a great innovator in the sense that he joined new words, and sprung rhythm is his greatest contribution to the art of poetry. In addition to developing new rhythmic effects, Hopkins also excelled in ways of rejuvenating poetic language by his striking use of the language, often employing compound and unusual word combinations. His renowned works include the poem like The Wreck of the Dishland, Felix Rendell, The Windower, Pied Beauty, etc. So, this is all about the intro of the poet, and now here this is the text of this poem. The title of the poem is Spring and Fall, written by Gerard Manley Hopkins. So, students, actually this poem examines the principles of nature, on the principles of life on which nature works, and here the poet talks about the philosophy of human life, or the concept of mortality, in a very beautiful way. So let's talk about the text of this poem. Here I am reading for you. To a young child. So this is the epigraph of the poem. Epigraph means a kind of where the poet dedicates his piece of writing to particular person or thing. So this poem is dedicated or addressed to a child. So here we find there is a narrator, there is a speaker who talks about a certain kind of philosophy, and on the other side there is a listener in the form of a young child. We can say there is a young innocent child who is a girl whose name is Margaret. As we see in the text that the poet begins the poem in this way. Here I am reading for you. Margaret, are you grieving over golden grove unliving? So Margaret is a little kid, a little girl to whom the speaker of this poem addressed to is addressing, and what he says that the speaker says that Margaret, she is a young and innocent and girl, a child, who is crying over something, who is grieving. So the poet here is asking that why are you grieving over golden grove unliving? Here the golden grove means forest with golden yellow leaves. So this is actually the coinage of Hopkins. Means there is a forest whose forest with golden yellow leaves, full of golden yellow leaves, and unliving. Unliving means the shedding of leaves. So the speaker says that he sees that the child is crying over something, and what is the reason behind her crying? That she is crying because the trees are shedding their leaves. So the speaker wants to clear here, wants to make the clear the reason behind the crying of the little child, that as if she is feeling sad about something. And why she is feeling sad? She is feeling sad about the leaves falling off the trees in a forest that he calls Golden Grove. So Golden Grove has a very magical or fairyland kind of sound here, and we also find that there is a repetition of the sound g in the name, also makes here the pretty use of literary device alliteration, as we find Golden Grove and grieving. So now it has been clear for us that in the first two lines there is a rhyme. We can find there is a rhyme in the last words of these two lines, grieving and unliving. So actually this gives the line, this rhyme gives the lines a kind of sing-song sound. So it also seems to appropriate to the young child also. And unliving is a kind of word which describes the leaves falling off of trees. So it is also like unliving is like the word undressing of trees, something. So now moving ahead, next the poet is saying, with your fresh thoughts care for you. Leaves like the things of men, you with your fresh thoughts care for, can you? In the next lines, the poet makes clear the things to the child, that these shedding leaves of these trees, they are like the materialistic things of man. So here the speaker is making a comparison, a direct comparison between two things of there are the shedding leaves of the trees, which are similar to the those mortal things of man, which also keeps living, or which we can say that here that when the child is crying over such inexperienced kind of thoughts or things she understand. Like in the very next line he says that with your fresh thoughts. So fresh thoughts here denotes that the child is why she is able to care about the leaves, because she has very fresh thoughts, means she has very innocent kind of understanding, and she is more innocent rather than of thinking these kind of things. That here we find that the child doesn't have uh, so much experience in her thinking. That's why the poet is saying that see these setting leaves are just like the materialistic things of a common man, and she also has fresh thoughts, fresh immature uh, understanding for those things. She is actually, in other words, we can say Margaret here, she cares just as much about small tragedies in nature, like the leaves falling off trees in the autumn season. So see, the same kind of things also happen with common human beings. Human problems, like the things of men here denotes the common human problems in life. So that means these are unimportant things. And when he says that can you hear the phrase, it follows, it seems to be a kind of declaration that in other words we can say you care as much about those leaves as you do the things of man also. So it means the narrator seems to say that Margaret is such a silly child, silly girl, that you care just as much about those leaves falling off as you do about your family's health or other things of common human life. So we find here that in the third line there is no comma, after the end of the word you here in the third line. And it is just continues straight across that line break here. And when we reading aloud, we can find that when a sentence continues after a line break, you with your fresh thoughts care for. So here this sentence is continuous after a line break, so and without no punctuation. So it is called an enjambment in rhetorical language. And so the poet has successfully used enjambment in the third line of this poem. And now moving ahead, what we find here, we are as the heart grows older, it will come to such sights colder, by and by nor spare a sigh. So now the poet says that he is expressing his sense of astonishment, that when he says that Margaret won't react with the same kind of sympathy when she grows older, when her heart, here the phrase the heart grows older. So here the heart actually this is a part of body, and here the poet doesn't use Margaret, the the whole human being, but he uses heart, the part of body, uh, to represent the whole of the person, or his or her attitude. So the heart is not Margaret that is mentioned, but the heart seems to uh, the part of body which represents the attitude of the kid. So here we can also find another literary device which is used by the poet, that when the whole, using the part to mean that the whole personality, and this is actually called the synecdoche, when poet uses to represent the whole personality or attitude about something of a person, about something, by using the part of body. So here the speaker really means that Margaret is the person, when she ages, when she become older, to sights like the leaves falling from trees, she will come to experience these kind of things in her future life as well. So when she gets her adult self, she will become habitual of these kind of things. So she will not, uh, when she experience these kind of pathetic things, when she experience more troubles or difficulties in her life, she will be her reaction won't be the same as uh, the kind of her crying on the shedding of leaves of trees. So she gets older, she won't be that level, that kind of sympathetic person. She will become much mature by having experienced in her life, and by and by and one by one, when she will be become much more older, more mature, what happened? By and by, nor spare a sigh, the words of when would leave me lie, and yet you will weep and know why. So here, the in these lines, the speaker continues the same sentence he stated in the earlier lines. When Margaret is older, she won't spare a sigh. She won't sigh over dead leaves or even the whole heaps of, though worlds of when would life leave me lie. If the whole heaps of forests or leaves or become them heaps of leaves are lying at her feet, she won't sigh over those dead things. So here the word when would occurs, it just means dead leaves or bark. It also suggests the sickliness or disease. When means something pale. So Wenwood actually likes the word wormwood, that tastes bitter, something bitter. So and yet you will weep and know why. So leaf meal lie. So here leaf means that the dead leaves are lying in a scattered, disorganized way. And speaker says that even though Margaret won't cry over whole heaps of dead leaves, when she becomes more older, she will still weep, and you will weep and know why. She will still weep. So the exact meaning of know why is actually ambiguous here. Perhaps the speaker is saying that in the future Margaret will know why she is crying, and that would be the most straightforward reading of this line, that it is not clear whether the she when she would be an older person she will be crying, and she will also know why she is crying. It means she will get more experience through the passage of time, and in future she will become much more experienced and much more mature, and she will also know the fact of the mortality of each and everything in her life. And after then what the poet says, now no matter child the name sorrow springs are the same. So the speaker says that it doesn't matter child, there is sorrow springs means the sources of sadness, sorrows, the sources of sorrows, the sources of sadness are the same whether we are young or old. It doesn't matter when what we call them. You say that something saddest something, some kind of sadness occur in one's life, whether we are young or old, we feel the same kind of things, and we experience the same kind of agony, the same kind of pain in our life. So it doesn't matter whether we are young or old. And nor mouth had no nor mind expressed what heard of ghost guessed. And here the poet says that when it happens, there is no word, there are no words to explain about the sources of sadness. And he says that the sources of sadness are so difficult to express, either for the young like Margaret or for the older people like the poet himself. In other words, we can't describe it with mouth, means here with words. We can't describe them with our mind, nor mind means with our understanding, with our thoughts. We cannot explain what heard of ghost guessed. And the poet says that hurt, but our heart knows the reasons. Our heart means our and ghost means our spirit or soul can guess about it. So our heart knows the reason behind all those sadness, all those sorrows, and our spirit can as well guess about it. So here we also find in the lines sorrow springs, the repetition of the sound se means the alliteration has been used here. And we also find in the word mouth, mind, the repetition of the sound ma. So here also alliteration is used. And what happened next? It is the blight man was born for, it is Margaret you mourn for. So here at the end the speaker says that these sorrows of sadness are common to everyone, each and everyone. So the blight means the sorrows, that it is the blight or the sorrow that everyone is born for. So in the end, even though Margaret thinks that she is crying over those dying leaves, she is really crying over her own mortality. It is Margaret you mourn for. So the poet is saying that she is mourning herself in a weird way about her own mortality. So we get to know that the little girl Margaret here in the poem, who represents the innocence, the inexperienced aspect of human life, and whereas the speaker who communicates the message to the girl, uh, and the speaker who is one who acquired his wisdom through the experience of his life. So he hands over this wisdom as a legacy to the next generation. So he is communicating to the little girl, actually conveying his wisdom to the next generation. So although the poem is extremely simple in expression, the ideas it conveys are highly philosophical and thought-provoking. Mortality is the main theme of this poem, and we find that mortality is the main source of all kind of sorrows in this world. The theme of the poem, actually, we can sum up in the line, sorrow springs are the same. So this particular line conveys a profound message to humanity that be it nature or man, mortality is the chief cause of this sorrow. So here, throughout the poem, we have also noticed that the poet have used compound words like golden grove, vanwood, leaf meal. These all are used by Hopkins in this poem, actually add to the literary beauty of this poem as well. So thank you, students. I hope you have understood well, and now we will meet in our next class. Thank you.